journey. Sit back, buckle up, enjoy the ride with Crystal Petrie.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of 60 Minutes. I'm Crystal Petrie, your host. Today, we are all going to be educated on something I feel that we all need and perhaps all want, and that is money and financial literacy. And today, sitting with me, joining us, that's going to help educate us on that, is Vernon Durden. So welcome to the podcast, Vernon.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now let's see here. We have a couple titles that I'm going to introduce you with.
Okay.
So, Vernon Durden, a lifelong resident of Beaumont, Texas. Mr. Durden, you wear many hats. That is to say, you are a philanthropist, a business owner, civil rights activist, real estate mogul, businessman, mentor, and the list goes on and on and on. And congratulations on all of those hats.
Well, thank you. Thank you again.
My first question is, how did you become a philanthropist?
Well, I look at the word of philanthropy. Philanthropy is simply someone giving money.
Okay.
And you opened the podcast with everyone who wants to know how to have money, get money,
right,
and how important money is. So being a philanthropist is having, I'm not going to say excess money, but enough money to be able to help other people with. So yes, we, my wife and I, been very blessed, and with the other businesses and entrepreneurial aspects of my life, I've been able to, develop some expertise around getting money.
Excellent. Which is why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I do know that you are wise, if you will, with getting money, saving money, spending money, building things that will help bring you more money. And I do feel like, myself included, so many people need to have financial literacy, but maybe don't know where to get that information from. So my hope and my desire with this interview is that they'll be able to get that information from you specifically.
Okay. Well, I'm just one of many, so
yes,
whatever experience I've had, I'll be willing to share. Okay. Thank you.
Now, can you tell us what is money? I mean, when most people think about money, we're thinking about $20 bills, $10 bills, pennies, quarters, and nickels. Is that basically what it is, or is there more to it?
Money has several definitions. Okay. Currency is what you're talking about. Folks use whatever they can barter with or exchange as money. Mm-hmm. So we're now talking about currency, which is what we deal with in the United States to exchange resources or acquire things. So. Okay. You said, how do you get the information about finding money, managing money? I took the liberty knowing that we were going to have this podcast, and everyone who wants to gain wealth, to develop wealth, should. Very simple book. Okay. This book is called, it's a Dawn book, it's called Loan and Mortgage Payment Table. And simply put, part of what I have done is develop real estate. I can actually sell you a home cheaper than I can rent you a home, and that a fundamental act of the rule of 72. So if I explain to you the rule of 72 in compound interest, the rule of 72 says this: whatever your money is earning, that interest rate, divide that interest rate number into 72, and whatever that number comes up to be is when that amount of money will double. For instance, if your money is earning 8% and you divide 8 into 72, it goes how many times? 9. So in 9 years, whatever that amount of money is, if it is earning 8%, it will double. So let's say you start off with $100,000, which is an easy number, at 8%. And 8 go to 72 9 times. If you are 21 years old with $100,000, at 30 years old, that 100,000 become how, what? 200,000. that 200,000 when you're 39 will become 400,000. That 400,000 when you become 48 would be 800,000, and so on and so on. Mm-hmm. So that's compounded interest, and this little table here will show you that you can actually buy a home cheaper than you can rent one. There are people who have been renting for years for $1,000, $800, or $900. Now rental rates are going to $1,500. So imagine if you're renting for more than 7 years at $1,500. I could actually say that same house, $100,000 house, for less money than you can rent for and own it in 7 years.
So how would people find out how much interest their money is making? Is that their savings account, their banking account? Okay, the book.
The book, yeah. Savings accounts and banking accounts. So it's not really complex. It's about making wise decisions or the right kind of decisions. Buying versus renting. Doing without some things that aren't necessary. Sacrificing, saving. I speak to people all the time. You say, oh, they are the mentor. I do. And when I speak to people about saving, I ask them a question. Are you saving until it hurts? Mm-hmm. And people will say, yes, I'm saving. I said, well, are you saving until it hurts? How do you know when it hurts? It hurts when you have to sacrifice some things that you want to do, not need, that you want to do in order to save. I've never been to a Super Bowl game. Okay. I don't own any Air Jordan tennis. Okay. Not that I can own them, but when you start making decisions to save, some things you'll do without. I'm not a basketball player. I don't need to jump 8 feet in the air, so why do you need Air Jordan tennis? I see a lot of parents who want their kids to have a better life or a good life, think that they need to give them Air Jordan tennis versus a regular $10 or $20 pair of tennis. And that would do the same thing. And in so doing, as you make those decisions, you're also teaching your kids how to make better choices. And that kid won't grow up wanting to go to a Super Bowl game, paying $700, $800 for a ticket, that you can see the same game on television. Now, so it's about making decisions.
There is a saying that says the wealthy is quiet, the rich is loud, and the poor is flashy. Is that what you're referring to with buying the Air Jordans, all of these other things? Is that saying true?
If you notice, Crystal, you brought up a very good point. How many 2023 cars with big tires on them, fancy paint jobs on them, parked at apartment buildings? A person has spent $30,000 for a car and another $20,000 or $30,000 souping it up, customizing it, but they're living in an apartment building. And that same money could have been used for saving or investing. So you're right. Noise, the fad, the latest trend. So that's not making good decisions.
So what about people who just say, I don't want the responsibility of the house. I'd rather the easy life, if you will, of living in an apartment and having my souped up car.
They made a decision to not own. And this conversation that we're having today is about generating wealth or having money. So by doing that, they're going to relegate themselves to not having the money so they don't have that dream. They've never made the decision. They never said said to themselves, I want to have $1 million, or I want to have $100,000. They've said to themselves they don't want to do that subconsciously by saying, I just want to have an apartment, or I don't want to own a home, because it's a pattern of decision making that has gotten them to that point.
When did you decide that I wanted to be wealthy? I want to build wealth for myself and for my family and for generations to come.
Crystal, if you do reading, if you read a lot, you understand that, and I don't apologize for this, I'm financially fit. And so are a lot of other quiet people. Now you see people walking around every day that you don't know are millionaires, multimillionaires, but they're quiet. They're not making a noise like you said. But if you watch them, they are not the flashy type. You don't see them with a lot of at every event. So I made the decision some times ago because my father owned a business, and it's amusing that the words he told me in those days coming back so fresh today. He said, "Rent is something you collect, not something you pay."
Wow.
Rent is something you collect, not something you pay.
Okay.
So, as that, tumbles around in my mind, I say, well, I'm not going to be a renter. I'm going to own real estate. I've owned several homes and developed several properties, and I contend to make people homeowners, not renters. So I present this little book to them. And I said, look, I can rent you this home, but what I want you to do is tell me what you can save for 6 months. And at the end of 6 months, give me $10,000 down on this property, and I will save this house less than I can rent it to you, and you'll own it in 7 years.
And do people take you up on that?
They do. They do. And once again, when I rent to a person, it's a selection process. Right? I don't just rent to. I don't discriminate. But when people want to rent a piece of property from me, I assess their financial position, if they going to church, if they have kids in school, and it'll demonstrate that they make good decisions. If they have an old car, new car, 3 cars, 4 cars, whatever. So you kind of see the picture of people, just like yourself. I've never seen you out at a lot of fancy places, Super Bowl games, because I don't go. And I would think that you would be a good prospect to sell a home to.
Well, thank you. I think
You're
it
welcome.
would be too. Now, when selling homes, as you were referring to, and building wealth, does your credit score matter? What is your credit score, and is that important with building wealth?
The credit score is one of the most important things you can have.
Okay.
You develop and build your credit score by paying your bills on time or before time. And a lot of people may think that it makes sense to have just a few different loans that you pay, but your credit score is built on having a diversity of loans: home loans, car loans, real estate loans. You need 4 or 5 different type categories of loans versus one. Pay those loans off in time or beforehand, and there's a formula that the loan companies use, on credit card companies, that your outstanding balance should never be more than 30% of the credit line. For instance, if you have a credit card for $1,000, your outstanding balance should never be more than $300.
Okay.
And on and on.
Now, is there a such thing, and it sounds like it is, but is there a such thing as good debt and bad debt? And can you explain that difference to us?
Well, what is a good debt and a bad debt? It depends on what that debt is. So if you have a home loan, it's a good debt. If you have 3 or 4 different cars, it's a bad debt. If you have a credit card, excuse me, if you have a credit card, and the category of items in there are a lot of activities, fun activities, clothing, tires for cars, outstanding balances for activities like when you can charge for going to a baseball game, football game, whatever. So that's a bad debt.
Okay. Now, with building wealth, I would assume that your first step needs to be saving.
Yes.
Or learning how to save.
Yes.
So how do you go about learning how to save? It has to be habitual, correct?
Saving has to be a habit. Crystal. And you save, I used the term earlier, save until it hurts. Right now, if you can't save, it's because you're spending money beyond your income. So we all know what our income is, and you should know what your income is. And you should build yourself a budget on how much you spend each month. You have your utility bills, you have your home loans or your mortgages, you have your car loans. So once you build your budget around what you can spend, and you don't over budget, and you don't overspend, then you can save. So let's use, for instance, if you're making $4,000 a month, and your take-home pay is $3,500 a month, you don't want to spend more than you bring in, where you have to charge things beyond your capacity to pay.
So do you think that regardless to how much you're making, you have the ability to save? Because I know a lot of people, they have their bills, as you stated, your light, water, gas, your clothing, your food, kind of your basic necessities, and they feel like with all of my bills and my obligations, I cannot afford to save. So is there any truth to that?
Everyone can afford to save.
Okay.
Here's a cell phone.
Yes.
I don't have a plan. I don't have a $300 plan or $1,000 plan. I don't have a $1,500 cell phone. I see students walking around without a job in college with a $2,000 cell phone with no job.
Yes.
So if they had a job at Chick-fil-A or wherever, and they had a cheaper phone without a plan, they could save. So you mentioned how much people say they can't save because, no, your question was, can you save no matter how much money you make? You can if you make the right decisions.
Okay.
Make the right decisions.
Now, you were speaking earlier about having your budget and sticking to that. Can you explain a little bit more about exactly what is a budget and how do you, what's my question? What is a budget and how do you work within your budget?
You write down the bills that must be paid. We all know you must eat, you must have a place to stay. If you have a vehicle, you must have transportation. You put down those necessary bills.
Is this monthly, weekly?
Your monthly bills. You put those bills down, and you write down what the balances are, or how much you owe. Then you determine how much money you have coming in. There are also some other bills. You know, I don't do it, but people make bills, expenditures. I'm not going to talk about nails are not pretty, but there are businesses that thrive on people wanting to have their nails done every week.
Yes.
And I don't know what it costs, but I know it's not free. So, and natural nails are beautiful. So if you just forego the nails every week, we're going to say it's $25, and that's $100 a month. That's an extra $100 you can save just by making a choice to not to have your nails redone every week. And nails is just an example. The same thing with clothing. You don't have to buy the latest fad simply because it's a fad. It is an expense that you're actually placing on yourself that you don't have to do. And by buying the latest fad, you're always behind, because what do fashion people want to do? They want to continue changing the fad so that you can continue buying. Yeah. So your earlier question, no matter what you make, can you save? Yes, you can. And you must save in order to be able to invest.
Okay. So what is investing?
You're finding a model or a platform that your money can make money for you. Okay. You've heard the term, my money makes money. Well, that's
Yes.
because you're investing. There's one thing that this book will show you, and I keep referring to this because this is almost like the investor's Bible. Once you learn about saving and compound interest, like I mentioned earlier about the rule of 72, you will find out that in order to generate wealth, you have to have good habits and good financial literacy.
Now, most people don't know about investing. They don't understand that concept. If I wanted to start investing today, or someone watching this podcast was like, you know what, I'm going to do what Mr. Durden said, I'm going to start investing. What's the first thing?
Go ahead.
What is the first thing that they should know about investing?
Very good question. You don't invest what you can't afford to lose, because there are no sure investments. I've heard the phrase, you probably have or have not. Land, you can wait. You cannot wait and buy land, but you can buy land and wait.
Okay.
You cannot wait and buy land, but you can buy land and wait. Land, they're not making any more of.
Right.
And investment is based on the capacity of an item or commodity to be wanted by more people than the amount of commodity that exists. So we look at Beaumont, Texas, and where the development is. If you look at Major Drive or Dowling, there's no land available.
Right.
So the houses and the property on that street is more expensive than somewhere else because there's less of that commodity that exists. So investment is based on the capacity of the lack of a commodity to be wanted by more people than the commodity exists.
Okay.
So
yeah.
You look at a stock, or people talk about oil. And now if you look at the market, they're showing where the oil reserves are being depleted and Saudi Arabia and other companies are going to start cutting back. So then the price of oil goes up because the commodity is going to be less for the number of people want it. So if you want to invest in something, look at an item or commodity that there will be less of and more people wanting it.
Okay. So in order to build wealth, you have to be able to save.
You must save.
Must save. Do you have to, or must you invest as well to build wealth?
We've talked about investing and being money that you can afford to lose.
Right.
So you don't want to start off thinking about losing money as you save. You save to a point to be financial fit, meaning someday I'm going to have all that I need and not have to continue working and retire. So I know that's a long way from where you're thinking right now, but you don't want to start investing or think about investing money that you may need later on to live on.
Okay.
So that's why I said you invest money you can afford to lose.
So the saving money, that brings up a thought for me, is the emergency fund.
Right.
How much should first of all, explain to us what an emergency fund is, and then how do you know, or how do you figure out how much you need to have in your emergency fund?
Yeah. Emergency fund, for my definition, and should be universal definition, is money that you would need in case there's a catastrophe. You lose your job, the major fund wage earner in the family expires. There's a significant event in your family that causes you not to be able to work or earn a wage. So those periods of time could be longer for some and shorter for others. So if you have a house full of kids, I say 4 kids, and everyone depends on you, your emergency fund would be larger because you would need more money to sustain your family than a person who lives alone or just 2 people or a person with one kid. Also, your emergency fund would be dependent on your cash required for you to sustain yourself. If you have a home mortgage, if you have a car mortgage, if you have other bills that need to be paid, you need to add those up and multiply them by however long you think the emergency will last. Sometimes emergencies last for a month. Sometimes emergencies last for 3 months or 6 months. So you should calculate for a 6 months emergency amount of money to save, to have available. Because just like things don't always turn around as quickly as you would like them to.
Right.
So you want to have a little free space or time to be able to recuperate.
So and I know there's no exact date or time, but generally speaking, once you have your emergency fund and you've saved that money, could you then start investing, maybe in small increments?
Yes. Once you have your emergency fund identified, once you have the items identified in your emergency fund set and saved, then you can start doing some investing. But don't jump in too much with investing. Get you a good financial consultant. Talk to some persons who've been doing some investing and learn from their experiences. People come to me and ask me, Vernon, where should I invest in? I said, what do you like? What do you know about? What do you have knowledge of? And if you don't have no knowledge of computers or pharmaceuticals or cattle or whatever, don't invest in that. Invest in things that you have knowledge of, because you're going to have to follow it and be interested in and have a passion for it.
Okay. Now, we've been talking a lot about saving. How do people know where to save their money? Should they save it in a bank? Should they save it in a credit union? Is there a difference besides the title?
There's a difference.
Okay.
Banks are owned by investors, people who want to make money.
Okay.
So they will charge you higher rates. They will be more stringent on how much they will loan you. And credit unions are owned by members. So they tend to have lower rates. They tend to be able to give you a better return on your investment. And they tend to have longer terms to pay back than banks. Banks are really profit driven.
Okay.
Credit unions are membership driven, meaning that they are try to be more flexible when it comes to membership, where banks are. Banks you're a number. Credit unions you're a member.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Yeah.
When saving, how does someone know how much to save? I know you said regardless of how much people make, you should be able to afford to save with wise decision making. So should they start off with $10 a month or $20 a month? Is there a number that people can start off with and then build up from there?
Yeah. That's a good question, Crystal. You save based on your capacity to not go back and pull it out or deplete the savings account. And it also goes back to good decision making. So I'm not a smoker. I don't bowl. I don't go out to clubs or whatever. I don't set the table up for 8 or 10 people that's going to cost $60 or $70. So you make a decision to do without some things. Like I mentioned earlier, you have to save until it hurts. So make a decision to give up some things and save that amount of money. So for instance, we'll go back to the nails again. If you want to save $25, start at $25, just give up the nails.
Okay.
If you want to, or give up the smoking, or give up playing. I love golf. Give up playing golf instead of 3 days a week. Give up playing golf 2 days or 1 day a week, and it costs me $35 to play golf, or anyone at a decent golf course. So you can save that $35. So you can start off small and grow based on your ability to learn to live without more and save more.
Now, the USA Labor Department just released a study saying that the average person stays at a job for 4 years. which I know, before then that was unheard of. You got a job, you stay there, you retire there. Do you think job stability, staying at a job 20, 30, 40 years helps to build wealth? Or can people, as they do now, stay at a job maybe 4 years, go somewhere else, and also build wealth?
Man, I wish you have some very good questions.
Thank you.
I stayed at my job for 34 years.
Okay.
And there were people who had stayed on the same job for 40 years, and people stayed for 45 years. You're right. Those kind of things, job tenures don't exist that much anymore. Of course, they do exist. The key point is you need to continue to reinvent yourself, whereas the job that you can offer more to the job owner or to the business owner. We all are hearing about AI these days, artificial intelligence. We're also hearing about coding. So when I went into the marketplace, AI, artificial intelligence, wasn't even thought of. And coding, neither was coding. And we talk to students today in the universities. You see this pen I have on from Lamar University.
Yes.
We talk to students today about reinventing themselves and continuing to talk to their counsel about what is the job market going to offer in the future. So continue to reinvent yourself, be able to market yourself for whatever capacity or job that may become available in the future. So I would tell students right now, anyone right now, to start thinking about coding, or STEM, and artificial intelligence. We give scholarships away. You talked earlier about me being a philanthropist. My wife and I have endowed scholarships at Lamar University. And we talk to students about what do you want to do, what you plan on doing. And we always mention to them to continue to look at the job market, because what you may be going to school for today, 4 years from now, that talent may not be needed or used. And you just educated for something that doesn't exist. So even people who are in jobs, a lot of companies offer continuous education programs. And that is because they know that the company knows that it has continued to stay up or current with the marketplace. So you'll notice businesses going out of business these days because they are outdated.
Right.
So be careful that your experience is not outdated when you're not out of a job.
I know, and I don't know if it's still the case to this day, but I know when kids are growing up, the parents, the mom, the dad, the grandma will say, go to school, get good grades, go to college, and get a good job. Is that formula still working to build wealth?
Go to school.
Right.
Go to college.
Right.
Get a job. Get a good job. Yeah, that formula still works.
Okay.
It has to work. Education is the key, and is really what kind of levels the playing field for most people.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, that formula still works.
Why do you think, I know when I was in high school, which wasn't that long ago.
Well, I was in high school. I graduated in 1967, so that was quite a while ago.
When I was in high school, and I graduated in 1998.
Okay.
They
I have
had,
shoes that old, by the way.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah.
But there must be some really good shoes.
Good shoes.
Yes. Yeah. They had economics in school. You had to take economics in school. It was just a 1 semester class. But now they don't teach economics. And I know in economics, they kind of taught a little bit about savings, checking account, how to fill out a check, things like that. They never went too deep with it, mainly because they didn't have the time to. But most schools don't even teach economics or the basis of filling out a check and things like that, taxes. Why is that going away? When financial literacy, I feel like, is just as important as learning how to read, how to write, how to do your math.
Oh, you said earlier that I'm a civil rights activist.
Yes.
And I am. And so should every parent be a civil rights activist for their kid. So if something isn't taught in school, it's because parents have allowed it not to be taught in school. We used to have PTA meetings, parent-teacher associations. I don't know if they still exist.
They do.
Parents used to go to school, sit in the classroom, and see what was being taught. Maybe it's because the schools think parents are teaching it to their kids at home.
Okay.
And the only way the schools are going to know what parents aren't teaching at home is for the parents to go to the schools and talk to the teachers and go to these school board meetings. The Department of Education exists for a reason. The Department of Education exists so that the department can know what needs to be taught in schools. If no one is telling them what is not being taught in schools, the Department of Education would think everything's okay. So that is a far cry from saying everything is okay. And you brought up, they used to teach this in school when you were going to school, but they don't teach it anymore. Why is that? Because we have allowed the schools to not teach what we think is important. So there's an old phrase, it takes a village. It does take a village. So where has the village gone? The village has gone silent. And there are a few people out there call themselves activists, like myself, who tries to sound the alarm when things need to be done or changed, not only in the schools, but in the community and in the nation. So financial literacy is very important. People need to have a job. They need to be prepared to have a job. And once they get a job, they need to be prepared to be able to stay on the job, pay their bills, and have a good style of life. You don't do that without some economics taught in school, some economics taught at home, some people picking up a book and finding out how best to buy, loan, or invest. And that literacy comes from people being active, not only in the community, but in the schools and in the nation as well.
So you think that financial literacy, and I'm in agreement with it, needs to be taught at school and at home? At
school, at home, everywhere that it can be taught. Our kids have challenges these days. Things are changing so quickly. We talked about when you graduated and when I graduated from high school, my class was the size of almost 400. And there were some classes that were larger and some classes that were smaller. And some things that were taught back then are not being taught today. Am I a better person because it was taught back then? I think so. Are our kids worse off because they're not being taught? I think that also. That's why bad decisions are being made. My dad told me that I should keep a car 10 years before buying another one. That's unheard of these days, keeping a car 10 years. My dad told me rent is something you collect, not something you pay. People don't use those mantras or mottos anymore. So this education that we're talking about is just not left up to the schools. It's also left up to the churches, to the communities, to the clubs, to society on the whole. And we can't, I know you're not advocating that, but we can't relegate all the education that our kids need, our community needs, to the schools alone.
Okay, so I'm assuming that your financial literacy came from your father, correct?
Part of it.
Part of it, okay. And what about the other part? Was that from school, or was it you had to just figure that other part out on your own?
You figure it out. I'll be, like I mentioned earlier, I'll be 75 years old pretty soon. I've had several businesses. I've had restaurants, I've had antique shops, I've had printing shops, I've had bought and sold real estate, I bought and sold commodities. So you kind of figure it out on your own as you live and go through life. So I have developed a capacity to find out what is needed and I try to buy it and sell it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we were speaking earlier about job stability. One of the things that comes with job stability is something called a 401k. Can you explain to us what a 401k is, and does that help you build wealth?
A 401k is basically a retirement plan. It's an amount of money that you set aside or that your company set aside automatically every month before you even see your paycheck. And it's like a forced way of saving and preparing yourself for retirement. If companies don't offer a 401k plan, individuals can develop one on their own. And Crystal, what it is, basically, it is a disciplined way of money to be put into a platform that you can't touch or you shouldn't touch until you retire. So 401ks are one of the vehicles to develop and build wealth. Real estate is another vehicle to build and save wealth. Owning a business is another way to build and save wealth. Creating an invention is another way of creating wealth. So there are several different vehicles. No one vehicle is going to do it all. That's why the word diversity was coined. Unless you develop this next greatest widget that someone wants and everyone buys, then you can get some quick wealth that way. Or unless you hit the lottery.
Which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing these days.
Yeah, a lot of the chances of getting it is it's pretty slim.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think that the goal for people should be to build wealth, if not for themselves, for their children, for their family, for the next generation?
There's a thing called building wealth. There's a thing called generational wealth. I use an example. If your parents had 5 businesses and you were one of their kids, of course, and then they put you in the will to inherit those businesses, generational wealth will be passed on to you. If it just so happens that there is no businesses in your family, you have to be the one to create that wealth yourself by either investing, owning, or developing yourself. So I would like to think that everyone would want to find a way to save, to create wealth for either themselves or their siblings or family members, so that that person will be able to have a jump start on building their wealth themselves.
Okay.
Yeah.
Charles Schwab just released a report earlier this year that states 59%, which is a ridiculous number, 59% of Americans are one paycheck away from homelessness. How do you think, as a society, we got to that point to where one paycheck away from homelessness? That's, no car, no house, food, clothing, things like that.
Yeah. I hope he's tried to scare people into reality, because lots of folks overspend. A lot of folks are not budgeting how much they spend. Society on a whole wants to have more and pay less. And who doesn't want the 5-bedroom home? Who doesn't want 2 or 3 cars in the garage? But it just so happens that the job force and your job that you have, while you may have good credit, and while the banks may loan you money to buy that, if you can't keep up with it, then you get to the point where Charles Schwab said you're one paycheck away. Because if you can't pay the loan or pay the mortgage, of course, they have a process that they do repossess your home and your car and everything else. I don't know that 59% is a low number or a high number.
Okay.
But one thing is sure, we are a nation of people that do spend a lot, and we don't save as much as we should.
Do you think that's one of the reasons why these commercials and these businesses, if you will, they promise, you can go from $10 to $100,000 in a year, are blowing up and blossoming so much because the country is in such a financial state? And is that realistic? Can you go from $10 to $100,000 in a year?
We all dream.
Okay. Okay.
But at some point we have to wake up and face reality. I mentioned, a person will want a 5-bedroom home, a mansion or whatever with 3 cars. But at some point you have to realize that, do I have a job that I can afford a 5-bedroom home and 3 cars in the garage, or 2 cars in the garage? We have to have a reality check. It's time for each individual to sit back and say, okay, this is how much I earn. This is how much I bring home. This is how much I have saved. If I continue doing what I'm doing for 10 years, how much will I have saved in 10 years from now? And what will that buy me? For instance, if you're saving $100 a month, that's $1,200 a year. In 10 years, that's $12,000.
That's good.
That's not a lot of money, but it is some money. So if you have $12,000 in 10 years, and you have a $300,000 mortgage on a home, that's why this report needs to alarm people that, where am I? How am I financially fit, and can I survive doing the same things I'm doing? We started this podcast about money and needing money, and amusingly, people don't realize or think about saving money until they need it.
When it's too late.
And then it's too late. Then the mortgage people are calling, and the foreclosure notice and stuff like that. But if you saved, we talked about this emergency fund. No one wants to be out of a job, but if the worst happens, if you have this emergency fund, you're not just one paycheck away from being homeless. You may be 6 months away.
Right.
But in 6 months, guess what? You may have had a job, or you may have been able to sell the car, or par down, or get rid of one of the car, 2. If you had 3 cars, get rid of 2 and keep 1, and still get transportation. Start taking the bus, start car sharing, start doing some Ubering, stuff like that. It's amazing that this conversation has morphed the way it has from savings to emergency funds. And then the thing about Charles Schwab saying we're one paycheck away. We're only one paycheck away because we haven't saved, and we haven't had an emergency fund. So Charles Schwab is not talking to people with an emergency fund.
Okay.
See?
Yes.
He's talking to people who doesn't have an emergency fund.
Yes.
So they should set off the alarm and say, okay, I need to get an emergency fund. If I'm one paycheck away, I need to save, so where if I am, 6 months is how many paychecks? At least 12 paychecks away.
At least, yes.
If you're getting paid twice a month. So you 12, so those people, they're 12 paychecks away.
Right.
With the
I didn't
emergency
think
fund.
about that.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Do you think that you have to have patience to build wealth?
You have to have patience.
Okay.
And you have to wait. We talked about the rule of 72, which means a number of years before the money will double. And I don't know how many people understand the rule of 72. Once you understood it, then you will start saving and putting that money away and having patience until that money doubled.
Right.
And you'll see yourself in the position walking around quietly with your $1 million.
Quietly?
Yeah, quietly, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You'd be surprised how many people walk around in Beaumont that are millionaires.
Would I be?
Oh, you sure would be.
I think I would be because, I would be.
Yep.
I would be.
Yeah. There are more than you think.
I believe
There
that.
are more than you think. Yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Now, you've spoken and explained the rule of 72. Can you explain the rule, the 80-20 rule?
Well, what that rule applies, that you save 20% of what you earn. You spend the 80% to keep yourself alive, eat, pay bills, and everything else, but save 20%. Out of that 20%, a certain percentage that you needs to go to the church and for gratuity to the church. So I'm a strong believer that you have to save and you have to give to the ministry to support. Well, I don't want to come off like I'm some Bible thumper. I'm not ashamed of being a Christian. I believe in saving, and I believe in giving to my church and to help others. So my Father is rich. My Father in heaven is rich. And if I'm his son, which I claim to be, well, he intends for me to be rich. And in so many ways, you're rich in so many ways, while you may not be monetarily rich. You have your health, you have your well-being, you have friends you can see, you have activity of your limbs. We know of some of the very richest people in the world who have expired because they didn't have good health. And they would have exchanged all the money they had to be sitting in a seat like you, to be able to walk around and talk and everything else. So a person riches does reside in different places. We're talking about money today. So if we stay with the subject, we need people to understand that if you're working, you need to save. And you need to save to the point where it hurts. And you need to save in a manner that you are saving with money that you've made a decision not to throw away on trivial things. I'm not saying nails are trivial, and I'm not saying Air Jordan tennis are trivial.
Okay.
But as we save, we are generating wealth for us to be able to retire and have a good style of life. So we as a country, as a nation, as a people, should take the responsibility to make the decisions that's going to afford us to save and live better. And in case there's an emergency, save enough where you have an emergency fund where this reports like you're one check away from being homeless doesn't exist for you.
Now, there is a saying, it's an old one, where it says, money can't buy you happiness. Is that true?
Money can't buy happiness, but what it can't buy, I don't want. No, that's kind of a joke. Money can't buy happiness, but money does relieve a lot of the tensions that cause pain.
Okay.
So, and there's a scripture in the Bible that speaks about money solving all things. I don't know the exact words, but we happen to live in a society where it takes money to live. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be happy, you get your hands on some money and be able to do the things and have the things you want to have, and then you'll be happy. I've been fortunate enough and blessed enough to be able to have a job and to learn early to save, and I've gotten myself in a position where I can give back and make some other people happy by being a philanthropist. So the scripture also says it's more blessed to give than receive. So if I believe all of that, which I do, and if I serve, and if I try to serve in a way that I please God, then I'm going to do those things that bring happiness not only to me but to others. Yeah, so they say money can't buy happiness, but it can solve the problems that not having money will cause.
Okay. We need to start adding that last part to that.
Yeah, it can solve the problems that not having money will cause.
Now, the book that you have referred to several times during this podcast, if someone wanted to get that, where could they go? Do you have to buy that?
You can buy it. Most bookstores have it. If they don't, you can ask them for this called the Dome Loan and Mortgage Payment Tables. It has, in this book, it tells you if you have a loan, what interest rate you've been charged and how long it would take you to pay that loan off and what that loan amount will end up being.
Okay.
So I use this when I sell a home to people and make them aware that I can sell them a home cheaper than I can rent it to them. I tend not to rent because I want people to be happy and not have to worry about having a place to stay. And there's a way of developing generational wealth. If you had a home and you had to pay for it, and you had a child or however many children, you can, pass that home on to your kids. And that's really generational wealth by not having to, to buy a home.
Okay.
I have a mortgage. Yeah. My first home that I bought and built, I bought from the credit union. I borrowed the money from the credit union. At the time at the credit union, I could borrow $25,000 on my signature. That's how I built my first home with the $25,000.
I don't know what's more impressive, the fact that you could build a home for $25,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think at all.
1977.
Yeah.
1977.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
impossible in 2023.
Yeah. I know, right? Yeah, I'm selling homes now to people that's nothing near the home I built, in '77 for $30,000 and $40,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we are wrapping up, and you've given so much great information and advice for building wealth and saving, if there was one piece of advice that you can give for a beginner, someone who's like, you know what, I'm going to start making better decisions, I'm going to start saving, what piece of advice would you give them?
Look at someone that you admire. Ask them some questions about how they got there. What did they do to get there? And most people will share their life experiences with you, just like you did today. While I'm not an authority on everything, I have had some life experiences that I could pass on to other people. One of the things is, like my dad told me, rent is something you collect, not something you pay. Don't start off renting. If you start off renting, don't make it a mindset that you will continue to rent. Find a way to buy. But your question was, what advice would I give them? The advice was to find someone that you think are successful and look at what they have done over a period of time and have a discussion with them and find out, how do I do this? I have some mentees that I've talked to that ask me the very same thing, and I've given them some advice. Some of them take it, some of them don't. But that's what I would tell them. Find someone and talk to them. None of us have all the answers. None of us come into this world knowing everything. We all learn from someone, and do some reading. And there are enough people in the community that can help you. I go back to that statement earlier. It takes a village, and it does. It really does. I don't know who you've talked to, but I'm sure that you can lend your successes to having seen someone and talk to them and say, you know what, I'm impressed by that person. I kind of want to be like that person. The person I want to be like was my dad. The smartest, wisest man that I know. And he told me things in those days that stay with me today. I mentioned to you earlier, rent is something you collect, something not you pay. Try not to exchange cars every year. See if you can keep your car 10 years. Now, I may keep it 7, I may keep it 8. but I certainly didn't train every year.
Right.
So that's someone that you should admire and listen to. And that's what I would tell anyone. It just so happens that it was my dad. And today, my brother and I, my brother lives in California, and we talk all the time. We always refer to the lessons my dad gave us. And my brother, very successful, retired businessman himself. My dad had real estate, so I did real estate. My dad had businesses, so I had businesses. So I followed my dad's blueprint to generate wealth. And it was a blueprint that worked for him, so it worked for me. And that's something that we should all, there are some things that are just tried and true. And you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
True.
Just
True.
use the wheel that's been rolling all along all the while.
Yes.
And and it'll work for you. It will work for you. You brought up a couple of terms about patience. Our kids are just, we call them the microwave kids these days. They want everything. They want everything right now.
Yes.
Immediately.
Yes.
You just have to have patience. You don't harvest without plowing. And then you plow. You have to put the seed, plant the seed, and once you plant the seed, you have to water it and germinate. Then the plant will grow, and then you harvest. You don't plant today and harvest tomorrow.
It's true.
It's about patience,
Which I think a lot of people are lacking. A
Yeah.
lot of people are lacking patience.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we get ready to end this interview, you have been amazing. You have given me so many aha moments, as Oprah would say, for myself. And I would think and feel like that I'm pretty financially intelligent, but a lot of the information that you have given me, I'm going to go back and implement. So thank you for that.
I would hope that something I said will stick with you.
Yes.
And whoever will see the podcast. I will reiterate, none of us know everything, but a lot of us know a little bit of something that can help someone, and I hope this would help someone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My final question is, who do you think would make a great guest on this podcast, but you have to help me get them on?
Oh. Nellie here at the Foundation Building, Nellie Bevilacqua. She has a wealth of information, and I think she would be a very good candidate.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in and watching and listening. I do hope and pray that something that was said today will help you on your journey to building wealth. You can catch this entire podcast on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. Until next time.
So inspiring.